What is up, guys? Welcome back to Overspray. In today's video, we are finally getting back to the Honda Civic project car. We're gonna be starting on the roof of the car. Now, if you guys seen in one of my previous videos, the damage on the roof is, well, pretty significant. So let me go ahead and give you the rundown of what the roof actually looks like. And then we'll continue on to a couple tools that I bought in order to tackle this little project over here. All right, so today's project, this is the roof for the Honda Civic project car. And well, you guys can see that it's seen some better days. So you can see some deep scratching in the roof. You guys can check that out. The paint's been, well, I'm not sure if this is paint. I think this is Plastidip. Couple tips on removing Plastidip. It's a, I reached out to dipyourcar.com. And they basically told me that it doesn't look like Plastidip, but it doesn't look like paint either. So somebody must have used some sort of undercoating to paint the top of this. And you could see some pretty heavy scratching. This was not done by me. Somebody else did this, or maybe just the paint is just starting to I don't know, scratch, I guess you could say. I don't know. So if we look on the other side, you can see where I have already started. I used some 80 and went up to 180 up here. Put some body filler here, but I'm not done yet. I still have to finish this area. But this took me several hours just to get this area here. So I ordered a special tool to get the roof done, and let me show you what that special tool is. So the special tool that I ordered from Eastwood is this little tool right here, the Contour SCT. Now, really quickly, this thing says that it quickly removes paint, rust, and more. Surface conditioning metal, 1,000 and 3,700 RPM, powerful 9-amp motor. So yeah, this is what I'm going to be using in order to tackle the roof on the Honda Civic project car, because to be honest, the DA sander just was taking forever. It just was not cutting the way I would want it to. So we're gonna give this thing a try, and well, let's see how good it does. Now let's go ahead and start with the unboxing of the Eastwood Contour SCT. When the tool arrived, I was pretty excited to put this thing to work, because to be honest, I was getting a bit frustrated with the roof because of that Plastidip. It was just very difficult to remove. No matter what I tried, it just either was too messy or it just wasn't working. When I used the DA sander with 80 grit, it basically clogged up the 80 grit sandpaper almost immediately. When I tried to use the paint stripper, well, the paint stripper, all it did was, although it did somewhat remove the coating, it also left a huge mess. So this tool does represent some quality. I already see some features that I really like about the tool, and I can't wait to put this thing into use. But first, before we do that, we need to install the handle for the tool. To install the handle on the Contour SCT, it's actually quite simple, and tools are supplied with the Contour SCT. So you will get two different hex keys, and one is to install the handle and the other is to change the burnishing wheel. And you also get some new brushes and of course the handle itself. To install the handle, you first have to remove these two hex bolts. These are actually what hold the handle in. So just be careful, there are two different sizes. One side is longer than the other, so just take note of that, because I don't think they are interchangeable. So the long one actually goes on the left side of the tool, and the shorter one actually goes on the right side of the tool. So if you ever wondered how loud this tool is, well, let's go ahead and do a sound check. Alrighty, so as you guys can tell, it sounds very similar to a polisher. Now do keep in mind that the tool was actually at its full speed, so this is at its highest setting. Now looking at the trigger, when you pull that trigger, there is a slight bit of a delay and a sort of a ramp up, and the tool will ramp up slowly to the desired speed of whatever you have selected on the roller switch. So basically just to not have a runaway tool, sort of like a grinder. When you turn that thing on, it goes pretty much to full speed. With this, it's actually a ramp up so that the tool doesn't actually jolt right out of your hands. So I decided to put the Contour SCT to the test in its stock form with the stock burnishing wheel that was supplied with the tool. Now I tried my best to remove any of the material that was on the roof. Now this is, I believe, Plastidip, but I'm not too sure, to be honest. This car came like this when I bought it, so I'm really just trying my best because, well, it's a mystery coating. As you guys can see here, the stock wheel basically didn't do much other than maybe some light scratching, but as far as material removal, the stock wheel really didn't do well. I would say that this wheel is better suited for maybe some aluminum that you want a brushed look for. I would say that this wheel would be adequate for that type of application, but as far as material removal, yeah, it didn't work too well. Now, many of you guys are going to be asking me, what is the abrasiveness of the stock wheel? Well, it's an equivalent to 120 grit, but in my personal opinion, I think it's closer to like a maroon pad on a roll. So it was back to the drawing board with the Contour SCT, and it was time to basically select a new burnishing wheel for this task. And of course, I took your guys' recommendation. A lot of you guys were saying that the black abrasive drum would work great for this type of application. So I decided to go ahead and place an order on the black abrasive drum and wait about a week for its arrival. So I headed back to the garage with my new drum, and let's go ahead and open it up and see what we got. So I basically took your guys' recommendation on this, and I really weighed heavily on your guys' opinion because a lot of you guys were saying that the black drum is basically the best one. Now it is equivalent to a 40 grit, which is good for paint removal, rust removal, and basically body filler as well. You can see how much more aggressive this black abrasive drum actually is in comparison to the stock wheel, because really, well, you guys saw the results. The stock wheel really didn't do much, and with the black drum, it's much more harder, much more stiffer, and a much more abrasive. Like I said, the stock wheel just wasn't adequate for paint removal, at least in my application. But I would say if you're doing metal work and you kind of want to have a nicer finish, the stock wheel would probably do fine for smoothing out some of those minor imperfections with metal, or maybe even having a brushed look to your metal. Now, to change the abrasive wheel, it was actually quite simple. All you really needed to do was remove a washer and also a bolt. Now, do keep in mind that this is a left-handed thread, and as you guys can see here, it's actually marked on the washer itself, but it does tighten to the left and loosens to the right due to the rotation of the actual tool itself. Once you're ready to install the new wheel, it basically just slides on, and then you go ahead and tighten the bolt, and you are basically ready to go. Now, to lock the tool, there is a small button on the side here, and this basically just locks the tool so that you're able to keep the tool from rotating to be able to lock that bolt down and snug it up. Now, there's no particular torque setting, so I just went ahead and snugged it up to what I thought was appropriate, without over tightening, of course. So that's exactly what I did. So as far as my PPE, I'm using a 3M TR600 VersaFlow. Now I will say you don't need anything fancy to use the Contour SCT, but I will say that you want to stay well protected and at least some sort of face shield or maybe some eyeglasses along with some sort of respirator or paint mask that is able to filter out any of the air, and also some really good ear protection. In this case, I am using my AirPods Pro, which have some noise cancellation features as to protect me from the noises that this tool will actually make. And I also went ahead and protected the car with some 3M sheeting just to keep any of that basically metal off of the car and basically keep it much more cleaner. It really goes a long way because this stuff does get quite messy doing this in a single car garage. There's really nowhere where this dust can really go, so it was basically a necessity for me to sheet the car. So at this point, I'm ready to close the garage and get to work. Now, the reason why I'm closing the garage is, well, basically for noise. Of course, I do have neighbors and I gotta just stay considerate. So I go ahead and close the garage because this tool is pretty loud, and it's not necessarily the tool that's loud, it's just the work that's being performed is quite loud. So just want to keep that down for the neighbors. And well, let's go ahead and get to work. Decided to stop, but this is what the roof is basically looking like. And of course I'm not finished. I still have to do basically the front half, but it got a little bit late on me and it started to rain outside and it started to get super humid in here, so I decided to stop. And like I said, it got a little bit late, and just, you know, for the sake of all the neighbors around, I just didn't want to continue making noise. But as you guys can see, the metal came out real nice, and I'm loving this new tool by Eastwood. This is the Contour SCT Really enjoying this tool. A lot of people were asking me why I'm going down a bare metal. So basically somebody put this type of coating on it. I'm not sure what it is. I thought it was Plastidip, but I got a hold of dipyourcar.com, which is a big YouTuber. Fonzie actually responded to my email, or one of his teammates, and basically just basically told me to use some sort of adhesive remover. I tried that, but it really didn't do anything. And after talking to him a little bit back and forth, he was telling me it might not be Plastidip, but from my experience, it's got to be some sort of Plastidip or undercoating, because this stuff, when I would sand it down with 80 grit, it would just gum the paper like that. It would just gum up the 80 grit and really wouldn't do anything. In the beginning, I did that side first with 80, and it took me like 3 hours to get this very small section done over there. Now with this tool, with the Contour SCT, it took me probably an hour and a half to do basically from here to there, basically half the roof, if you really want to call it that. Now this one has a sunroof, so I got to be a little bit more careful, and this is why also another reason why I wanted to stop, because I need to be a little bit more careful, because I do have some rubber seals here, and this thing will eat right through the paint and scratch it. I try to be very careful, but it did end up going through the paint, through the tape in some spots, and scratching the molding. So needed to be very careful with that. So because this is a little bit close proximity, very thin in this area, I wanted to be a little bit more careful. So I'm just gonna call it quits for tonight, like I said, and kind of taking a little bit more precaution with the sunroof seal. Now I do have a couple comments about the tool, so let me go on the other side and grab the tool, and we'll talk about it. All right, so what are my thoughts on the Eastwood Contour SCT? I think this is an amazing tool, to be honest with you. I do feel it is a little bit off balance, so it is a little bit heavier where the motor is. So basically it's heavier on the bottom side of it, right? So that causes the front to kind of bounce a little bit. So when I was first starting to remove the paint, this front half was kind of bouncing up and down like this. So you really have to apply some pressure to the front part in order to keep that wheel down, or else it will bounce like that on you, kind of like a pickup truck when they're too light in the back. Kind of the same deal, but that wasn't a problem. I did have to just put a little bit more weight on the front to try to, you know, keep the weight down and keep that wheel from bouncing up and down. And one other thing, of course, this tool actually rotates this way, which is counterclockwise. So therefore, any paint that you are removing is going to launch right back at you. So you want to use a mask and also some sort of face shield, because yeah, this thing is launching paint chips right at you, and you can pretty much tell from the bottom half of this tool that it's just launching right back towards you. So you do have to be a little bit careful when using this tool. As far as weight goes, it's probably a little bit heavier than like a polisher for your car. I would say that the noise level, however, is, although the tool itself is not super noisy, as you're grinding down, obviously the paint, it can be very loud, especially on the roof, because the roof is kind of like this, you know, this soft metal, so it kind of reverberates all the sound. I think that's a word, right? It kind of reverberates the sound, and you could just hear it from a mile away. So definitely use some ear protection as well. That would be very super important as well. And but as far as the tool noise, pretty much similar to like a polisher. You do hear a little bit of the whining. There is basically 2 gears inside of here, and you get a lot of whining noise from that. So basically a gear on gear type noise, basically 2 straight cut spur gears that are inside this tool, so it does make a little bit of noise. but I think you have more noise on the panel itself with this type of aggressive wheel removing the paint than you do from the actual tool itself. We're gonna look at the top side. So this tool actually does have a speed adjustment here. It's a variable speed. I found that for me, I was using about 2.5 to 3,000 on the speed. I felt that that worked the best for me. I felt like the other speeds would be a little bit too fast for me, but honestly, I guess it would just really depend on what you're doing with it. But 2.5 was plenty for me. And I will say that it does get a little bit of panel heat, but not a lot. Honestly, it's not a lot of heat that you will feel on the panel. But I did take several breaks in between. And you do have to go a little bit slow with the tool, with the burnishing tool from Eastwood. I will say that the reason why is because you got to give it time to actually remove the paint. If you move too fast, it's really not doing much. It's basically just scratching the paint. But if you kind of have to move a little bit slow, and because you got to move a little bit slow, you can get a little bit of panel heat. So you want to just be aware of that. So what I was doing is, although I was moving a little slow, I would also take small breaks so that the panel didn't get too hot. Another thing I noticed too is that I would go in different, I don't know if you guys can take a look here, but basically you have strokes going this way and strokes going that way. I found that if you do a cross stroke, that you'll get a bit of a finer finish. I don't know if you guys can see, like right here, it's a little bit finer. Whereas if you go just straight, you have a little bit more of an aggressive removal, and you'll end up with kind of this straight pattern, right, or lines. But if you do it cross, it actually smoothens it out a little bit. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. It actually feels pretty smooth here, whereas this feels a little bit more rough. So that is a quick tip as well. But overall, I would say this tool is amazing. I did not think I was gonna get this far tonight. I only had about an hour and a half to work with, and it is a Sunday night, so I do have to go to work tomorrow. So I wanted to get as much as I could done, and this thing really performed well for me. And I would highly recommend this to anyone that is doing some sort of project at their home that they basically want to go to bare metal with it. Anyways, that is enough from me. I'm pretty much got to call it a night. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Stay spraying. And as always, catch you guys on the next one.